Hello and welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy and thrilled as always to be here with Joe Stanley. Welcome to Jackie Felgate and Dr Nick Carr. G'day guys.
Hello.
Well, lots to cover this week, so let's get straight into it. Jack, what have you got on the health headlines this week?
Plenty happening, Darcy. We kick it off with a world-first lung treatment trial that's happening right here in Australia. A New South Wales grandmother suffering emphysema is one of the first dozen patients in the world to undergo a successful procedure to heal damaged lungs conducted at Macquarie University Hospital. She was treated with a revolutionary liquid that turns into a foam to seal damaged holes in the airways. It's remarkable. The non-invasive operation was a success and has dramatically improved her quality of life.
It's absolutely amazing. And Dr Nick, why does blocking up some of your damaged lung actually make it work better? This is my brain.
It's a great question, Joe. The problem with the damaged lung is it's actually what's called hyperinflated, or in simple terms, it's too big and it squishes up the healthier lung tissue. Now, until now, we've used surgery or one-way valves to try and reduce the unhealthy lung volume, but not everyone can have these, so this foam treatment is a really great new option.
So, Nick, from saving human lives to using human medicine to save animals. A baby giraffe named Satuni was born in February at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park with hyperextended leg joints. Safari Park staff were at a loss on how to save the calf, so they called in doctors specialising in human orthotics to devise a life-saving brace. Have a look at these images.
Now, it's a really clever approach, Jack. The problem for the calf was in her what's called carpus, which is the equivalent of the wrist joints in humans, but in the giraffe, that joint is halfway up the leg. And the carpus allows the animals to stand and walk, which is critical to their survival. And in this case, the poor little baby calf's front legs bent the wrong way.
Oh, it sounds incredibly painful as well. Specialists from the world-renowned Hanger Clinic devised and custom-fit moulded carbon graphite leg braces. The first time they'd treated an animal, let alone one so tall. The braces were a success and Satuni has now happily rejoined her herd. And humans definitely have a special relationship with nature, especially in the Dutch city of Leeuwarden. Thousands of residents have taken on a project to walk a forest of 1,200 movable trees across the picturesque city to raise awareness about climate change. The native trees are planted in wooden containers and slowly moved through the town. And as you can imagine, it is quite the spectacle. And once the 100-day project is finished, the trees will be permanently planted around the city. Isn't that beautiful? And speaking of peace and tranquility, how would you go being without your phone for a day or even an hour? I know I would struggle.
Yeah, not that well, I don't think, Jack. I spend most of my time telling my kids to get off the phone, but then I realise I'm actually on the phone as I'm doing it, so I think I've got a bit of work to do.
Well, the fear of having no mobile phone is called nomophobia. It's not a made-up thing, it's a scientifically proven fact. Here is the man behind the research, Fareed Kaviani.
Nomophobia is a portmanteau, so a combination of words. No mobile phone phobia. So essentially, it's the fear of being without your mobile phone. It can manifest differently in different people, but it can come across as a sense of distress or anxiety or discomfort at the thought of not being without your phone. Younger people are more likely to have high levels of nomophobia. That increases the likelihood that they'll use their mobile phones illegally and the frequency of using their phones illegally while driving. Our research found that younger people, 18 to 25-year-olds, were the most likely group to have higher levels of nomophobia. We also found that women, in comparison to men, were more likely to have higher levels of nomophobia. Our research looked into the relationship between nomophobia and illegal smartphone use whilst driving. This is important because nomophobia is a psychological experience, whilst driving is a physical experience. So we wanted to see if there's a connection between the two. What we found was people with severe nomophobia are 6 times more likely than people without nomophobia to use their phones illegally whilst driving. Our previous research also shows that nomophobia is directly connected with an increase in aberrant driving behaviours. So that's things like lapses and errors. So we found a direct connection between that relationship with your phone and bad driving, risky driving.
So, Jo, are you a nomophobe?
I mean, I'm as addicted as everyone else, for sure, but I do try to be really mindful about when I choose to use it and when I put it down, and I am very particular, especially when driving, to put it down.
And, which is important, Joe, because emergency departments see the devastating results of distracted drivers firsthand, because 30% of young people admit to texting while driving, which actually increases the risk of a crash by up to 15 times for car drivers, and it's even higher for truckies.
And if those stats aren't enough to make you stop, then think of the penalties. They range from a $350 fine and 3 demerit points to a whopping $1,033 fine and 5 demerit points in some states. And be warned, you can be fined if a phone is touching any part of your body, even your lap.
And I think given how dangerous it is, it's something we've all got to accept, and the distraction is there. We all need to take heed of that one for sure. Up next, the Aussie innovations continue after the break with a world-first breakthrough in treating dementia and how a tiny pest could be the key to surviving a stroke. That's coming up on the House of Wellness.
Each week we bring you news of the many life-changing breakthroughs Australian scientists and medicos make in the health sphere. And Dr Nick, we really are world pioneers in this field.
It's absolutely right, Joe. The Aussies have helped bring the world everything from penicillin to the bionic ear, spray-on skin, the cervical cancer vaccine. The list is endless. And one of my absolute favourites is the Aussie pioneer Barry Marshall, the West Australian physician who suggested that stomach ulcers weren't in fact due to acid and stress, but due to infection. Now, no one would believe him until he drank a broth of bacterial goo and developed severe gastritis. And it completely changed our understanding of ulcer development, and it earned him a Nobel Prize.
Well, you would hope it would be worth it after going through that. Well, the latest news is on the devastating condition that affects around 500,000 Australians and the many more involved in their care, and that's dementia. Most people think of it as something that only affects the elderly, but that's not always the case, is it, Nick?
No, there's a certain type called frontotemporal dementia, and it tends to hit people who are a bit younger, in their 50s and 60s. It's actually the second most common form of young onset dementia for people under 65, and it actually affects thousands of Australians.
Anyone who's experienced a loved one go through dementia knows what a cruel disease it can be. It's like the person you once knew has disappeared, and it can cause massive personality changes and issues. So another Aussie innovation in the form of a breakthrough dementia drug can't come soon enough.
Michelle's a leader, always has been a leader, not a follower. Ran 3 or 4 companies for me for 25 years, we worked together. And then, yeah, in 2017, she was diagnosed. Never heard of early onset dementia prior to Michelle being diagnosed. There's actually younger ones than Michelle that have got it. So it's quite common and it's huge.
Dementia is commonly considered to be a disease of older people and characterised by memory loss, so people forgetting names of things or where they've put things. But younger people can be affected by certain kinds of dementia, such as behavioural variant frontotemporal dementia, which is what we're studying. So in this form of dementia, it's commonly characterised by changes in personality and changes in behaviour. BVFTD is the second most common form of young onset dementia and occurs in about 15 to 30,000 Australians at any one time. The most common symptoms experienced by these patients are changes in their behaviour and their personality, so patients can end up repeating themselves and repeating the same actions, so sort of winding thread or tapping on tables. Lots and lots and lots of walking is quite common, and then inappropriate kind of thoughts and actions. So laughing inappropriately in public situations, being sexually explicit, making strange and rash financial decisions. So we often hear about people losing their life savings, losing their super because of rash financial decisions that were made without their spouse or their family's knowledge. So it can be very, very, very destructive for a person and for their family balance.
Oh, I thought dementia was just, you lose your memory sort of over time. But it wasn't that at all. It's actually a life sentence. I was very lucky to have the NDIS jump in and take over, and I've got all the carers now. She's got carers 6 days a week.
We're going to go out for a drive after this. Yeah? Go out for a nice drive.
It can get misdiagnosed as depression. It could get misdiagnosed as it's just a midlife crisis and just, it's just life getting to you based on the symptoms alone. So that right now there really isn't a brain scan or a blood test that can easily tell you that you have this disease.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Jack.
Are you able to help me get this tablet?
So our drug is called sodium selenate, and we're trialling that as a therapy for BVFTD. One of the underlying causes that we do understand in BVFTD is an accumulation of the protein called tau. If the drug works in the way that we think it does, then the idea would be that the drug would clear the excess of tau that's in the patient's brains, and that should stop the disease from further progressing in these patients. And theoretically, if we get patients early on enough in the course of the disease, there is potential to actually reverse some of their impacts as well.
Michelle started the program 12 months ago, and she has the pills morning, lunch and evening. We've all found, the carers and myself, and found that it's actually held it. It's not going to cure it, but we find that there's a lot, it's pulled things right back. There was a day I was outside doing something in the garden and I turned and here she's putting the washing off the line. Well, she hadn't done that for like 2-3 years.
It's very early days. We published a study earlier this year that in a small number of patients, and we found that in a majority of the patients, so not all, but a majority, we did see a reduction in the rates of decline in the patients who were treated with the drug. So this was a very small study and an open label study, so we have to be cautious in the conclusions that we draw, but it does look somewhat promising to start with.
The trial, unfortunately, is going to finish next month. And I've already asked the question, will it continue? And they said no. Just keep it going, for goodness sake. It's just imperative. I can see what it's done for her in the last 12 months and what it could do in the future.
Unfortunately, we cannot continue to supply the medication to Michelle beyond the end of the trial. This is a problem with funding. We are funded by the Australian government and we don't have sufficient funding to provide the drug to patients outside of the trial.
People just think dementia's you get it at old age. It's not about that at all. I think you'll find that there's a lot more under the old age that are getting it, and it's more predominant these days than what they think. And what it's causing it, they don't know.
It is a problem that we don't appreciate, that younger people can get dementia, and people are very surprised when it does occur. It is still a major health concern.
I love cooking and so does my husband, but we both hate the nightly grind of deciding what to put on the table, especially when the kids screw up their faces and push it away, which they do all the time. They might not like all that their parents dish up, but all kids love superheroes. And we've got one of our own in the shape of House of Wellness health guru and cook extraordinaire, Luke Heinze Hines. Over the years, he's come up with thousands of ideas to help us eat clean, green and everything in between. So you can bet I'll be first in line to taste test his latest serve of delicious, easy-to-make meals that even my little Michelin-starred darlings are guaranteed to love.
The premise for my new cookbook is 5 in 5, losing 5 kilos in 5 weeks with only 5 ingredients. If you want to blitz that up, I'll finish this off. Making time to cook food should be something that we can all incorporate into our day. But I don't want people to need an hour and a half to cook a simple dinner on a Tuesday night. 20 minutes, wham bam, in the kitchen, on the plate. Not only does it taste great, but it was easy to put together. Cookie, caramel, banana. In this day and age, you'd be hard-pressed not to meet or at least know someone closely who has a food intolerance. That's why with this book, I've made it gluten-free, dairy-free and refined sugar-free, not because I need you to avoid those ingredients for results, but I want this to be accessible to everyone so that no matter what your family looks like or the type of foods you love or enjoy, everyone can get involved.
There's a lot of colour there, Lee.
Some people, when they're trying to make a positive change with their health, open up a healthy recipe book and they get really overwhelmed. Not only are their lists of ingredients a mile long, but they utilise ingredients that they don't even know existed. So what I've tried to do is use everyday ingredients, but keep it to things that you can get everywhere, that you know how to cook with, that are guaranteed to have you looking and feeling your best. There can be certain guilt around particular food groups. Some people are scared of fat because they think that makes them fat. Other people think that carbs instantly put on weight. Well, I want to strip it back and bring it back to the science and say if you're eating a balance between good protein, smart carbs and healthy fat, you'll get the results you want, and not to be scared of delicious ingredients. When it comes to getting the results you want, it's really the time in the kitchen that counts. My number one rule, you cannot out-train a bad diet. This isn't about quinoa salads and kale smoothies. This is about nuggets, burgers, pizzas, the type of food we look forward to that still gets results. I'm really happy with this, Lee. Looks so good.
How can you resist making a meal with just 5 ingredients that tastes amazing, apart from the health benefits? Look out for Heinz's book. It'll be released later this year. Up next, we reveal the tiny mite that's a menace to our pets, but could be a lifesaver for stroke victims. We're back after this.
If you've ever noticed that suddenly your jeans don't zip up anymore, there's no need to panic. You haven't grown overnight. It may be fluid retention, a very common experience. Eating too much, dehydration, inactivity, hot weather and hormone fluctuations are just some of the causes. We can turn to the plant world to help ease the symptoms of bloating and discomfort from fluid retention and to help eliminate that extra fluid. Dandelion is a natural diuretic used in traditional Western herbal medicine to help increase urine output and to promote healthy liver function. Celery seed is another herb used in traditional Western herbal medicine, which supports healthy urinary tract function, enhances urine output, and reduces abdominal bloating. And Philanthus amorous has long been used in Ayurvedic medicine for supporting urinary tract health, enhancing urine output, and protecting the liver. There is no need to go out gathering these herbs in order to add them to your diet. Thankfully, we can turn to supplementation. Not only can they help with fluid retention, but this unique combination can also help with mild cases of gout and mild rheumatic aches and pains. Before you go out shopping for the next size up in jeans, make sure you know it's not just a case of retaining fluid.
Now, we're all dog fanatics here on the House of Wellness, and Dennis, the blue staff in our house, is by far and away the most loved member of the family. But, geez, it can be hard work at times, from eating all the kids' Easter eggs to then swallowing too much seawater when one of the kids took him swimming down the beach. So you sign up for a bit of work when you have the family pet as well.
Oh, absolutely. Daisy, being a Labrador, of course, has eaten everything in her path, including shoes and the couch. So, yeah, we have to have a small loan pretty much every time we take her to the vet. But right now we're heading into tick season, which runs from October to March. But recent wet weather followed by warm days means this year they're expected to be out in force. So if you live along the East Coast especially, you need to check your pets every day. And I didn't know this, Nick.
Yeah, now what you're looking for is those little lumps, especially in hidden places under the collar or behind the ears. And the best way to remove a tick is with tweezers. And mostly if you do that, Dennis or Daisy are going to be absolutely fine. But you need to know that there are some ticks that can be fatal to animals. So if your pet's behaviour changes, straight to the vet.
And ticks don't just affect dogs and cats. Native animals and my beloved horses also get them. And Dr. Nick, the same advice applies.
Well, despite the necessary warnings, ticks aren't all bad. In fact, researchers are now looking into using the common Australian bush tick as a potential lifesaver to treat stroke.
Brilliant story, Joe. Apparently their saliva contains a unique anti-blood clotting ability, which has prompted scientists at Australia's Heart Research Institute to put these tiny mites seriously under the microscope.
Stroke is very common in the community and it's caused usually by two problems. The majority are caused by blood clot, which blocks blood to the brain or parts of the brain. The other type of clot, which is less common, is due to a bleed in the brain. And when that occurs, that can be a very serious problem. So one of the most important things is to work out what type of stroke, and that influences how you treat the condition. We are making progress, good progress, but stroke has been such a difficult disease to treat. When you have a stroke, the most important thing to do is get to hospital as quickly as possible, diagnose the condition and start treatment. And we know that as soon as you can get treatment, you're going to get a better outcome. Overall, less than 10% of people will get a really good outcome from treatment. Contrast that with heart disease, the outcomes are much better. So we've made huge progress with heart attacks, but strokes lagged a long way behind. And we're hoping with our better understanding of what causes stroke, we'll come up with better treatments. It was one of those serendipitous moments where our close colleague, Professor Richard Payne, got in touch with me and said, look, we're working on these really cool molecules, anticoagulants, which come from little pesky ticks and other so-called blood-feeding organisms. And then we started testing them in our assays, our clotting assays, and we found a really striking, unexpected finding. I've been working in this area for nearly 30 years, and I've not seen anything quite like this. It was a really unique way to thin the blood. Ticks will feed and they don't cause any bleeding. That's the unique property of these things. They're very good at keeping the blood thin, but they don't actually cause much bleeding. That's exactly what we want when we're treating patients. So Professor Payne's group at University of Sydney, they're world authorities at actually making these molecules, and they can do it at large scale, so they can produce a lot of this material. If you had to try and milk the saliva from a tick and purify it, it would take you an enormous amount of effort. So using their ingenious approaches, they will come up, manufacture this molecule, and then we can test it. We've screened over 100 molecules and found a couple of them that were really quite striking in terms of the way they work and how effective they are. Initially, when you come into hospital, you want to get the drug on board really quickly, and the best way to do that is to inject it in the veins so that it starts acting straight away. And you also want to be able to give it so that you don't thin the blood too much. And this drug has this unique property which prevents it from doing that. And that's really its secret, if you like. It's why it doesn't cause much bleeding. We've learned a lot from people that have a heart attack, and we know there's no one magic bullet. It's actually a combination of treatments to get the best outcome. It'll be the same in stroke. So the anticoagulant that we've discovered is going to be a really important part, but it needs to be combined with one or two other medications, which is what we're working on at the moment. So you're going to end up with a cocktail, which is going to give you the greatest chance of getting blood flow back to the brain and prevent the natural evolution of a stroke.
Now, stroke remains one of this country's biggest killers. On average, one person has a stroke every 19 minutes.
And we have covered this topic a lot, which is for a good reason. Education is key to surviving a stroke because the earlier you get help, the better outcome, right, Dr. Nick?
That's right, Joe, because it's all about responding to the warning signs fast. And that word is important because the F is for face, which means checking for things like a drooping mouth. A for arms, whether the person can lift them or feel them if there's numbness. S is for speech, being if the speech is slurred or they can't understand you. And the T is for time, as in it's time to call 000 because you need to get something done as soon as possible.
It's such good advice, Nick, and it is predicted that the number of first ever strokes will increase to more than 50,000 annually by the year 2050 unless more action is taken. So the work being done here by our Aussie scientists, once again, cannot be talked up enough, does.
For sure, Jack. From tiny ticks that could save lives to helping your swimmers stay strong, Heinzie and GQ look at men's reproductive health next, right here on the House of Wellness.
Reproductive health isn't just the responsibility of ladies GQ. The more we learn in this space, the more wannabe dads are stepping up.
It takes two to tango, Heinzie, and I want to bring two minerals into the equation to help men's little swimmers get to their goal: zinc and selenium.
Essential for many systems and functions in our body, including fertility, zinc improves sperm quality and density, helping with formation and maturation.
What zinc also has in common with selenium is its antioxidant support, protecting the body from the effects of free radicals.
Selenium mops up these free radicals and plays a big role in helping to produce testosterone, maintaining prostate health and increasing sperm motility, or their ability to move.
Making it easier for prospective parents of starting or adding to their family.
Luckily for guys, both of these minerals can be found in animal sources. We're talking things like seafood, red meat, poultry and eggs. Nuts are a fantastic source too.
We also turn to supplementation to support men's reproductive system health.
And I'm sure you'd say that the outcome is definitely worth the GQ.
Just back up a moment, Heinzie. My daughters are probably watching, my grandsons are watching, so no comment.
That's an exclusive. You've heard it here first. Back to you in the studio.
The A to Z of Vitamins is brought to you by Go Healthy's Go Oyster Plus Zinc, a convenient, high-strength, one-a-day formulation to support reproductive system health in males.
Jack, it's been really joyful watching my daughter, my only daughter, I've got the three boys as well, and her love of rowing. It's been really brilliant for her to be involved in a team sport, which she loves, and early starts. You've got to get out of bed early for rowing, but you've got two girls. They're pretty active. What sort of sports do they enjoy?
My 5-year-old loves Auskick. She started it this year. It is the cutest thing watching them all run around. I love taking her to the games every weekend. And my older daughter, she plays basketball and she does horse riding. But one of the things I've noticed is so many dads getting involved. For Father's Day, they had a kick-off. There's a lot of ex-footballers floating around a little frustrated.
Well, it's so nice to be able to connect with your daughters as well as your sons in a great way. And we're also big supporters of female footy right here on the House of Wellness. 4 new teams have entered the Women's League this year. And I have to say, Season 7 of the AFLW has been brilliant. The standard of play has been phenomenal.
Oh, it's been unreal. And as they say in the classic Stars, we've come a long way since the AFLW officially launched in 2017. Women players are getting better sponsorship and broadcast deals, bigger and better venues, and a growing army of young players are coming up through the ranks. It's so exciting.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Players then include Sydney Swans' latest recruit, 18-year-old midfielder Montana Ham. Montana was the #1 draft pick of 2022 and is regarded as being unstoppable when she's in full flight. And I'm happy to report that she ranks her dad and her older brothers as her #1 fans.
My first ever gift was a football. So we grew up around, I had 2 older brothers. My dad played footy throughout his whole junior career. So we had like a little park across the road from us where we used to go after school every day on the weekends, and I would just walk around and Dad would make me drop the ball and not kick it, just make sure it drops on its point. It was make sure everything was in line before I would kick, and like just drilling in those fundamentals. So everything that he taught me has really helped me in my career. 18th of May, that was when my dad was born, and this was the dream that we shared together, something that we both wanted for me. And obviously, when he passed away, that was obviously something really sad and impacted me heaps. But to wear that number and kind of when I step out on the field, it would be like he's there with me and he's looking over me, and I know he'll be very proud of me.
Looking for tall options, there's Montana Ham.
You just see moments, don't you? Just moments within games, and you get a few more games into yourself, a bit more fitness. Amazing what she's going to be able to do.
Look at that kick to Privatelli.
I grew up playing Auskick with the boys. I was the only girl at Auskick. Then I went through under 10s and 12 with the boys. I always used to say to my dad, oh, one day I'll be playing in the AFL, and I didn't know anything different. And then it got to an age where it was kind of like I was thinking that I'm going to have to give it up. I got a call from my mum, and my brother had signed up down at Keilor and they had a girls' team. So I sat down with my dad that night and my mum, and we talked about whether I wanted to stay in the boys or move to the girls, and I was like, no, it's the girls is where I want to be.
And the first time Clark, and now right up the middle again.
Obviously there's a lot of life skills and physical skills that you get from every sport that you participate in. Footy was always the solid one, but being able to branch out and learn the skills of basketball, that really helped me with like changing directions, help with jumping as well. So I like to think I'm a good mark, and basketball has definitely helped me from that.
Scooped up. Ham in game number 1.
A lot of people can have the talent but not the passion. So if you just keep loving what you're doing, it'll come.
And this is a heartbreaking moment potentially for the number 1 draft pick. Montana Ham stayed down after that kick, and there's real concern.
Mani-pedis are a beauty routine as old as time. But let's not live in the past. Now with beauty technology, we can bring that salon experience to home. To perfect your nails like a pro, the Finishing Touch Flawless Salon Nails is an easy-to-use electronic mani-pedi tool. So it has 6 interchangeable heads for shaping and filing, grinding and smoothing, buffing and shining, and lastly, cleaning those cuticles. With an LED light and high and low speeds, damaged nails can be rejuvenated and any gel residue gone in minutes. For an extra level of self-care for your feet, the Finishing Touch Flawless Pedi has an easy reach design, and this is resulting in a more natural back and forth motion. There's plenty to personalise with 2 speeds and a coarse head for removing those stubborn calluses from the heels, toes and balls of the feet, or a fine head for buffing smaller calluses. Summer and Christmas will be here before you know it, so what better excuse to treat yourself, I mean others, to always be flawless from tip to toe.
Jade Kay there helping us get our fingers and toes summer ready because, my goodness, Jack, help me. It's time to put the winter layers away for another year.
Oh, I cannot wait. I love summer, but it is time to dust off the bathers, shorts and mini skirts, whatever your age. Did you see Hollywood star Gwyneth Paltrow recently made headlines by wearing what she said was her shortest skirt in 10 years, right before her 50th birthday? All the more power to her. The actress said she has no plans to stop showing her legs and, quite frankly, why shouldn't she?
Absolutely, there are no rules, Jack. I say if you want to get your legs out, or any part of your body really, more power to you, although some of us might be a little bit more vain or self-conscious and choose perhaps to cover up our legs, maybe because of blemishes or marks, maybe.
Indeed, and for others it's not so much about showing their legs but dealing with the pain that comes with the veins in their legs and when they become swollen and twisted. Here's Dr. Nick to tap into the mysteries, the causes and the treatment of varicose veins.
We humans are bipeds, one of the only species evolved to walk upright on 2 legs. Now, this might be a really efficient way of getting around and leaves our hands free for things like swinging clubs at big scary animals or, more likely these days, texting, but it does have its disadvantages. And one of these is varicose veins. Varicose veins are so common that 25% of adults have them, and they can occur in pretty much any vein, including the scrotum. But the ones you mostly know are in the legs. And they range from small and fairly discreet to large, knobbly and frankly pretty unsightly. So why do they happen? Well, because we stand upright on 2 legs, to get back to the heart, blood has to travel uphill, helped by a series of valves. And if those valves give way, the blood travels back downhill, causing the veins to bulge and varicose veins. They're more common when there's increased pressure on those valves from things like obesity, pregnancy, or just standing around all day being a biped. But the good thing is varicose veins don't actually matter very much. Yes, they can make the skin a bit dry and itchy, sometimes leading to ulcers, and the big ones can ache a bit, but nothing much worse than that. One common misunderstanding is that they are a cause of dangerous clots. Not so. That's DVT, or deep vein thrombosis, nothing to do with varicose veins on the surface. But people often want them fixed, and back in my medical student days, that meant a surgical procedure called stripping, which was pretty much as gruesome as it sounds. These days, you're more likely to be offered laser treatment or sclerotherapy with an injection directly into the vein. No knives needed. But as with everything in medicine, prevention is better than cure. So keep that weight under control. Now, of course, if you're really worried, you could always try walking around on all fours. I mean, when did you last see a cow with varicose veins?
Mario, a lot of people believe that prescription medicines cost the same no matter where we go. Is this the case?
Certainly not. I mean, prescription prices, like any items of commerce, vary in price. Customers now shopping around for their prescriptions, they can just look online and you can see the cost of your prescriptions, and the price savings are dramatic that can be made just by simply shopping around.
So what is the government co-payment?
The government co-payment is basically the PBS system. So the government sets a safety net limit. So for more expensive drugs, the government basically guarantees the patient pays no more than $42.50. So any medicine that costs more expensive than that, the government says the patient pays $42.50, the government pays the rest. Now, for a pensioner, that co-payment amount is $6.80. The good thing that the government introduced a few years ago is they allowed pharmacies to discount that co-payment by $1. And Chemist Warehouse passes on that dollar, so pensioners pay $5.80 at Chemist Warehouse and general patients for the maximum co-payment prices pay $41.50. We actually did a tally because the government's allowed us to do this dollar discount since 2015, and we've just crossed the $100 million mark of saving, $1 discount since that point. We've just reached that amazing milestone. So it's $100 million of savings to pensioners and general patients since that new law was introduced.
And how does that apply to medications?
The big savings are to be had are for the items that fall below the co-payment, and that's where the price competition really hots up. And there's thousands of drugs that fall below $42.50, and that's where significant savings can be made.
So what kinds of savings are we talking about here?
We're talking huge, and I bought some in just to off the shelf, so just to show you. And you know, if we look at a drug like Nexium for heartburn, you can pay anywhere up to $30 for this type of medication for a month's supply, and at Chemist Warehouse it's only $15.50. So that's a huge saving.
Huge.
Okay, and particularly for someone that takes that every month, and over a course of a year, that's like $165 saving over a course of a year. Similar for other blood pressure, for this rosuvastatin, which is for cholesterol. We sell this for $5.99. You're paying anywhere up to about $20 for this product at most other pharmacies. So it does make sense to shop around for these type of medications.
And does this apply to drugs prescribed for chronic conditions as opposed to short-term medication?
Correct. And, you know, for short-term relief, like an antibiotic like simple amoxicillin, I mean, that's only $5.80. At most other pharmacies, you're paying close to $20. And it's a one-off. And even, you know, Ventolin inhalers on prescription, you can get 2 of those for $20 at Chemist Warehouse, and that's usually about $30 to $32 at most other pharmacies. So huge savings, whether it's for a chronic condition or whether it's, you know, just a regular antibiotic.
So I've heard there are some changes coming October 1, some price changes. Can you share on that?
Yes, and this will affect most of the drugs that fall below $42.50. The government's done a deal with the generic manufacturers and the wholesale price of those drugs are going to rise dramatically come October 1. Which should, in most other pharmacies, lead to a substantial increase in cost. But at Chemist Warehouse, we've bitten the bullet. We're going to absorb all those costs, so there'll be no changes to our pricing. Our everyday low pricing will continue beyond October 1, so no need to panic or panic buy pre that. But it's really important the health industry plays its part, and just to keep the medications as affordable as possible. And that's our mission statement, is to make sure medicines are affordable for more Aussies.
So what is your advice for consumers who are seeking the best possible outcome for their medications?
Always go to pharmacists for their advice, no matter where they are. And then when it comes to price and affordability, particularly now more than ever, it's time to shop around. Do your research. It can be online or come into stores, see the prescription price list and know your pricing because there are huge savings to be made just by simply shopping smarter.
Earlier earlier, we looked at how researchers are investigating ticks as a possible key to treating strokes. Now, Dr. Nick, what's the weirdest or tiniest thing that you've ever put under a microscope?
Well, I did once see a poor guy in a lot of pain who didn't realise he'd swallowed a small chicken bone, which went all the way through until the last centimetre when it turned sideways on and got stuck on the way out. So I had to remove this chicken bone from his backside.
There's not enough money in the world for me to do that for someone, Joe.
It's interesting stories, though.
Full of respect for
doctors, absolutely. I don't know, you didn't put it on a microscope, though.
that needed a lot of gloves.
I can imagine. Well, there are about 10 quintillion, which is a billion insects roaming the earth. And while many people get creeped out by creepy crawlies, a Welsh photographer has made it his life's work to capture their beauty.
Geraint Radford uses a macro camera lens to shoot extreme close-ups of bugs. He wants everyone to appreciate and connect with their secret hidden world and to show us the complexity of a fly's eye or the smile on a bright green grasshopper.
Yeah, have a look at these images. They are incredible. Geraint hopes that by showcasing the bugs, people will grow to love them and treat them with a bit more care.
You have to remember that bees pollinate stacks of our food that ends up on our table, and dragonflies, for instance, have been on Earth for 300 million years. So bugs definitely deserve our respect.
They sure do, and that's all we have time for today. To Joe, to Dr. Nick and Jackie, it's been great covering everything from tiny bugs to huge medical breakthroughs today.
For more great health news, tune into the House of Wellness radio show with me and Gerald Quigley this Sunday.
Thanks as always to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. We'll see you again soon.